I've lived around the village of Webley Hill the whole of my life, over 70 years. When I first remember it, the roads and lanes were narrow and overgrown and were gravel. 30 miles from London, you might as well have been 300 for all the difference it made. In, say, 1918, when my first clear memories were at the end of the First World War, well, the population in this area was really and genuinely rural. The population in Webley Hill, for instance, all worked on the land or in ancillary industries, blacksmithing or carpentry related to farming, something of that sort. No single person in Webley Hill depended on anything except agriculture for their livelihood. And the people were in many respects the same families who had been here for many hundreds of years, probably ever since the Reformation. They didn't go outside the area very much. They didn't need to. There was a village shop which stocked almost everything, and they perhaps went once a week to Cheshum, walking, if they hadn't got a pony and cart, and you could get everything in Cheshum. So it necessarily was a closed society, and I remember one old farm worker in Ashley Green, living only 3 miles from Berkhamsted, the oldest mainline railway in England. He'd never seen a train. He always used to say that when he retired, maybe he would go to Berkhamsted and have a look, see what they were like. The village of Webley Hill used to consist of just a church, a chapel, a school, the village shop, and the pub. Of these, only the church and the pub remain, the same pub now. Only a few local characters still remember. With the publican Benny Baldwin, it's a family memory. What he remembers and what his father and mother told him. His uncle Tom Reed is over 80 and was working on the land from the age of 11. I was only about 10 or 11. All our memories together paint a picture of things the way they were.
We had no tin baths. See, the copper was in the corner, boiling. Mother used to scoop water out and put a drop of cold in. You see, we all took our turn in the bathing. As one got out, the other one got in. There was no bathrooms, nothing like that.
Autumn and summer holidays, then you was going up to the woods getting wood for the winter. What you'd take was a piece of old rope, put a big sort of brick on the end or an old stone, chuck it over the old dead browse up on the trees, and you'd haul them down. You'd take them all home, and that was your winter fuel. A lot of that was for winter fuel.
We had one lamp stand in the middle of the table, an oil lamp. We couldn't afford a hanging lamp. And we had a lamp stand in the middle of the table, and of course we all sat round the table. And if you want to do knitting, or we used to play snakes and ladders a lot, or anything like that, but we all had to just had one light. Then to go to bed we had candles.
Nostalgia is an extremely powerful emotion in everybody. I feel it, everybody feels it. But I don't suppose any of it was quite as good as we thought it was at the time. I remember myself being stopped from going into the house of a small boy that I used to play with, Raymond Waller. And it was because my mother knew the whole family had got TB and she was frightened of me catching it. And nearly all this family were wiped out by TB within about 2 years. And the standard of life in this part of the country was very bad, and the standard of health was even worse. We're in the parish of Ashley Green. The little Victorian church is about 1.5 miles from Grove Farm. Ashley Green has still got a village shop, just the same one that was there when I was a child, and the one from which Mr. Palmer used to deliver his slightly grey and dusty cottage loaves. They don't bake them anymore. The simple way things were may be romantic in our memories, but the facts were very often different, as you can see in the records.
1878, was it? Yes, this register.
All the old registers are kept in the church, and Mr. Benyon, the vicar, showed them to me.
Well, this is the burial register, beginning in 1878.
Yes.
And on these first 3 pages, comprising 24 entries, 20 are of children. On this page, there's only one adult, 66 years. The others are 11 months, 10 minutes, 5 weeks, 12 years, 11 months, 1 year, 15. She was the vicar's daughter.
The occupations in 1905, labourer, labourer, and without a doubt they meant farm workers, agricultural labourers, gardener, labourer, 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 carpenter and gamekeeper, all really rural occupations. Go on to 1925, quite a different sort of picture. Still one or two labourers who would still be farm labourers, labourer, 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 policeman, policeman, labourer, motor driver. And that's something to boast about, being a motor driver in 1925, and then gardener. It strikes me that a lot of these names in this register are the same names as in the original Tudor church registers in Cheshum. You'll see quite a lot of these local names which are still with us. That name Pudderford goes back in this area to the 16th century. And some of the other local names, like Dell and Batchelor, even further, back to the 14th and 15th century. A sign of the way it's changed is the fact that when I first remember in 1918, there were 9 Pudderfords farming in the area. In 1930, it was down to 3. Now there are none at all. The War Memorial tells part of the story. In the First World War, most young farm workers joined the forces, and the casualties were obviously terrible. There are 22 names, a huge proportion of the young men in the parish. In the Second World War, when there was a larger population, farm workers were not called up and there were only 4 names. Church was important in people's lives, and at one time the chapel even more so. Some people went to both, including my sister-in-law, Vi Plested. There was not much else to do on Sunday.
I went to church and chapel. I used to go to Sunday school in the morning at church because it was our day school teacher and we had to go. We had to learn the collect and you didn't know which one she was going to ask to learn it, to say it, so we all had to learn it. And then back home again and to chapel for an hour, back home, have our dinner, and then wash up and all that, and then go back to church. Afternoon service they had there, didn't they? Okay. 3 o'clock. And we had a minister who stuttered and we didn't understand a word he said. Did you?
He had a terrible stammer. Actually, I used to get taken to Ashley Green Church and he did that as well.
Yes.
He had the most terrible stammer and I never understood it.
I never understood a word. It was more exciting going to chapel. That's how I knew all about the Bible and everything, going to chapel. We were 12 in family, but 10 of us lived. When I was a child, we used to spend a lot of time in the woods. There used to be about 3 families of us go and take the babies in the pram while our mothers worked in the fields. And we used to start off early in the morning, about 9 o'clock, and we used to go for the whole day. We'd play with our hoops, bowl our hoops, do skipping, hopscotch, and build a house in the edges where you had nice big edges. We didn't have watches in them days, you see, so my father used to show us how to use a stick as a sundial. We put the stick in the ground when we got there, and as the shadow moved round, we know that when it got to a certain point, it was time to get ready to come home.
People at that time on the farms were still pretty superstitious. There was a whiff of witchcraft about all sorts of things. And I remember a foal being born, and Walt Batchelor, the horseman, insisted upon hanging the afterbirth on a hawthorn tree. And the second time I saw him do it, I said, take it down, don't be ridiculous. I was getting a bit older. And he muttered and said, the foal will never suck unless you do that. And of course, the foal did not suck. And he went around muttering for weeks afterwards, silly young bugger, thinks just because he's gone to school that he knows it all.
We had to grow our own food. Everything we growed in the garden to last us all the year through. And potatoes we grew. And they used to storm in the bedrooms. Seems a funny place, but we used to storm in the bedrooms because of the frost. and cover them all over, and they have enough potatoes, more than enough we used to have, to last us, you know, till the next lot come around.
I was saying to Tom, did he get bacon and parsley dumplings and liver and onion dumplings, which is a thing my mother-in-law used to make for us, which was typical of the neighbourhood. And that brought up the story of Mrs. Bergin bringing the bacon dumpling into the field. They also used to make dumplings which were bacon one end and jam the other.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that was
I don't know what you called them, Tom. What did you call
pluggers.
them? Pluggers.
We used to keep chickens, always. We always kept chickens as we'd got eggs, and then we'd got a chicken, and then we used to hatch some off, you see, and then we got chickens if we wanted. That was a special treat, one of them to eat. Then we used to keep rabbits, lots of rabbits, and we used to eat them. And then occasionally, perhaps we had a pig. We used to get it from a tiny baby and then bring it up, because we've got plenty of room in our backyards for everything, sort of thing. There was no restrictions then, you could do anything, you see. And then when it got to time to big enough to kill, we used to have it killed, and we used to get somebody, they used to come in the garden, come to your house and kill it, eat the backyard. I've seen them kill them ever so many times. And then you'd have some of it, all the trimmings and all that, and perhaps a little bit of it, the head, and all that to eat. And then you'd put all the other down for bacon. Somebody'd come and do it for you. Bill Barnett was an expert on that.
Will Barnett worked for me for a long time. Until Vi said it, I'd forgotten he cured bacon. We went together to Jeff Hawkins' farm museum nearby and saw some things we hadn't seen for many years. Oh, well, I wanted you to have a look at this, because it's very similar to one or two we had, except this has got springs, and ours didn't have springs.
No.
And they were all very brightly painted colours.
That's right.
And unkind people used to say it's because you could find them then when you left them out in the nettles all the year. Jeff, I see this has got your family name on it, this one.
Yes, yes. Rather like, I suppose, vans have today to advertise. You can tell it's a road wagon because it has narrow tyres on the wheels. If you took that onto the ground, especially if it was in the winter when it was soft, they would sink in much too far. This was actually made as a road wagon.
I used to sit upon the wagon and hear me father sing. Crack goes the whip, boys, I whistle and I sing. I sit upon the wagon, boys, as happy as the king. For me horses they are willing, and for me I'm never sad. For who can lead a jollier life than Jim the carter's lad?
Well, there's a wheelwright shop, a very essential thing when all wheels pretty well were wooden, and their lifetime wasn't that great, so we were constantly having them repaired. Everything depended upon the wooden wheels still turning, and therefore it's a very vital part of a farm economy.
Yeah.
And most of the farm carts and wagons would be made purely locally, because it's a carpentry job, really. Here's a pit saw hanging on the wall there, and the system of using that was you roll the log over a pit in the ground, and the man who was in charge, he stood on top, and his labourer or boy or some poor devil lay on his back in the pit underneath, and he pulled the saw down and the man on top pulled it up. And you could make, apparently, through a long log, an accurate vertical cut that way. The man on top, working in the clean, was the top dog. The other one was the underdog. Jeff Hawkins says that it's this activity which gave its name to these expressions. All the sawdust would fall down on the boy underneath.
Yeah. Yeah.
He'd lie down on the floor. Will would try it out. I'll be the top dog.
Yeah.
You could get everything done locally in those days. At Ley Hill, we had both a wheelwright and a blacksmith, who, as well as shoeing horses, repaired ploughs and harrows and almost every other farm implement.
The village blacksmith, he came into every village, and we used to go and watch him. There was always shoeing the horses or mending the wheels of the farm implements and all that he done. We used to make the iron hoops. We used to go and watch him. One day a week he used to come. They'd be very fascinated shoeing the horses and getting it red hot and then putting them in the cold after they'd shaped them. Oh, it used to be a horrible smell because they cut some of the hoof away or they burnt the hoof to put the tips on, you see.
This plough was used on this farm. I should think it's at least 100 years old.
Yeah.
Fathers and grandfathers before him. Made locally, Brown's at Leighton Buzzard. And made, I would suppose, by blacksmiths on an anvil.
According to what sort of ground you got, we used to have to change these quite often. You probably didn't have to quite so often.
We haven't got so many stones.
No, that's right. And the shares, well, every day, sometimes with us if it was hard.
Oh, a share here would last perhaps a week.
Yes.
Yeah.
But almost every part on the thing's renewable, and that gives it an endless life, really. Only the farming included everybody in the countryside. If they weren't on a farm, they were doing something connected with farming.
My mother's father was the rat catcher and gamekeeper for Lord Cheshum. There were such big hedges that they was full of rats, weren't they?
That's right, and there were no way of killing the rats
there was
chemically
no
as there is
poison
now.
or anything.
Oh, no.
There was only them traps
That's right.
and where you collected about a dozen in.
Yeah.
So and then you had to drain
Do you
them.
remember when they were thrashing, that hundreds of rats would be coming out of the ricks?
Terrible, wasn't
Hundreds.
it? They used
All
to
the kids
put a
used to
bit
stand
of wire
around with
net in.
sticks, that's right.
Yes, we used to, every one we caught, I believe they give us a penny for, I'm not sure.
A penny for the tail.
Yeah, that's right.
My dad was a duck breeder. I've got it on my birth certificate. Father's occupation, duck breeder. When we moved to Chesham Vale, they had all these Aylesbury ducks in low sheds and the little old pens where they turned them out in the spring, the young ducks. And my old grandfather, he was the finest man with a bag and hook I've ever seen. He could cut it as good as a lawnmower for those young ducks to run on. And he was brilliant. And then Mum and all of them used to go down there when they was ready for plucking and send them off to London. They used to pack them into hampers and take them down to the station and off they go to London, these ducks.
This is rather a lovely picture of Tom Reed's father, who was a pony dealer, basically. And I think rather a crafty customer, by all accounts.
My father, he out with ponies and that, you see, and made the country, went to Stoke-on-Church Fair and all the fairs round, dragged us kids with him, Barnet Fair, 3 days. And, I mean, he used to drink, well, I'd drink, but nothing like he did. Because, I mean, my brother and me, we went with him one day to Boys Welp, and the farmer gave us a little, what we called a dilly pig. It was the little one out of the bunch. We brought it up, me and my brother, and fed it up and got it a good pig. Went to school. When we went home, Mother said, your dad sold the pig. What's he sold them? We bawled like hell. Yes, she said, but he'll be coming home with it'll only be the tail hanging out of his mouth, he'll have swallowed the other.
My father was a farm labourer. He used to have his horses and plough. Then at times he used to do hedging, and then get enough wood to take home for us for the winter, and enough to put the bottom of the ricks to build the stocks on, didn't you?
That's right.
Yeah, and then the bean sticks. We used to sell. He used to sell the bean sticks, and there used to be quite a lot of wood out of a hedge like that because they stuck it, and he cut all the tops off.
He was an extremely skilled man.
Oh, he was a very skilled man in hedging.
Known throughout the district as Stick.
Yeah. Yes, my father they called Stick because he was always hedging and always got sticks. You would never see him coming home without he got a bundle of sticks.
The hedges were cropped like everything else. All the work was done in the winter when the leaves were off, and they provided faggots for the bread oven, wood for sheep hurdles, and pea sticks for the garden. Very little was wasted, but always enough had to be left to lay the hedge. This is Arthur Young's survey of agriculture in Hertfordshire at the beginning of the 19th century, which touched right on the edge of this farm, our immediate neighbours. In the book, there are a number of diagrams of different agricultural operations there, including a very formalised drawing of hedging in exactly the same way that it was being done when I first came on the scene. Something which is still done by one or two people, but has largely gone out of fashion because of the amount of labour involved.
We begin by cleaning all the rubbish away and all the brambles and anything that wouldn't lay into a hedge. And then we cut the stems as near the ground as possible, is the best way, so that then the young shoots can drive up from the bottom.
The whole purpose is to weave a living hurdle the complete length of the hedge, plaiting the live wood together so it's going to grow again next summer, and make it possible to repeat the process in 7 or 10 years' time. It's reasonably stock-proof for sheep, but not for cattle. Time was when everybody on the farm could do this work, but now the skills are nearly forgotten. My neighbour Maurice Brown still has the skill and the inclination.
I'll finish off with heathering. Heathering is winding the pieces along the top. I do that to keep the hedge in position. It's on the main road, you see, from Bovingdon to Ley Hill, and there's quite a lot of traffic go by, and some people in cars stop and say, hey, they've enjoyed seeing it done. It's something today that isn't very often seen. It gives one a great satisfaction, laying a hedge.
Maurice, how did you learn how to do this job?
When I was about 16, I think it was, my father said, go over to Little Stonisters and start making their hedge. He didn't come with me.
He didn't?
No.
You just found out?
I'd observed how people did do it, and after I'd done some, he came across and told me all my mistakes. And I learnt in that way. It's an old-fashioned craft, and I like, as far as I can, to keep it going.
I remember when I was a child, we used to go around the hedgerows and pick all the lovely flowers. Lovely wild flowers, different sorts, of course. We used to make daisy chains and all that sort of thing. And then we used to pick up armfuls of flowers and take home and put in jam jars. Everything used to grow natural in the hedgerows, them days, but you have to search for them today, I'm afraid.
Farm labourers' wages were low, and they and their families had to find ways to eke out their living. Lots of little jobs would bring in a few pence. Weeding in the corn, thistle punching, potato picking, or at harvest time, even quite young children used to lead the horses to and from the field.
While the men were at work, these jobs they couldn't do that we had to do. My mother and, well, the women and children used to do it just for a few pence, and they used to be glad to earn that few pennies to help out with their family income. We used to look forward to that each year, little jobs to do, all through the year, whenever they could get it.
There are a lot of stones in the area, and they could be sold. And every 10 years or so, each field was picked. It would be harrowed to bring the flints to the surface, and women would put them into buckets and tip them into a cubic yard box which had no bottom. When it was full, the box would be lifted further up the field, leaving a pile of stones. They would be carted off and used by the council for making roads. Stones were a saleable crop. Now we just get a lad to remove the biggest and most troublesome stones.
We used to go stone picking. You picked up all the big stones on the fields, and you got 9p for that load of stones. It was very hard work, because we used to do that before we went to school in the morning sometimes.
Vi, you were the first person that drew my attention to the fact that acorns were collected when you were young for sale for pig keepers. I thought that that had all probably ceased in the Middle Ages.
Early morning, my father used to go to work and used to get up the tree and shake it for us, so the acorns fell down. We used to wait till it was a little bit frosty, because they fell out better then. And we used to go and pick them. We used to get, I think it was about 10p a bushel. And we used to take the old pram and put these acorns in and wheel through the fields. That was round Banks Meadow, a place called Banks Meadow. You know that, don't you?
Banks Meadow is where daffodils used to go in the spring.
Yes, that's right, yes. They used to grow very wild,
yeah.
The daffodils there.
In the winter time, you see, we used to, well, get up about 4, run round to our mole traps, you see. We set them, you'd find them where they cross the gateways mostly. We'd hold about like that. And we had a trap with 2 pairs of claws. And on the top, you see, you sprung it again, hooked it. And when the mole went through, he touched the ring in the middle, and that sprung the trap on him. It didn't hurt the skin, but the mole died, you see. Then we used to take it home and skin it, hang it on a board and dry. If you've got good mole skins, as I said, you'd get 18p. But for the rubbish, you might get 3p. That was one of the perks I had. I had two guineas a week. My house built wood and coal, and I was allowed to wire the horse matters, set snares, you see. Well, perhaps I'd get half a dozen rabbits. Not every night, some nights. And you see, if I got 6p each for them at the end of the Eagle at Ashley Green, that was 3 bob. If you got a rabbit for 6p, I mean, you could put him in what we call a dough prison then, in a basin. You chopped him up, put a bit of the dough round the outside, and another one over the top, and some gravy. Never to feed that 6p rabbit for a family of kids. Woman and kids.
Tom, an awful lot of people in Chesham, not people working on the farm, kept ferrets or a lurcher dog.
Cool, yeah.
Or someone with a gun. They used to.
I was always hunting.
Do a bit of poaching. And especially when a lot of people were out of work, a lot of town people went in for it.
Oh,
Who could blame them?
yeah.
Who could blame them? There were plenty of rabbits about.
Oh, I mean, you carried the ferret down your trader's leg.
That's it.
People don't realise what it was like in the, 1900s, 12 and onwards, all that time, because we used to go gleaning. All us children used to go gleaning. And gleaning was, after they'd cleared the field of all the shocks of wheat and everything, because they used to put it up in shocks them days, and before they got into ploughing it, we used to pick up all the ears of wheat that was left, because we was very poor them days, and we used to either feed our chickens with them or sell them. And we used to be very, very grateful to go in the fields and do that sort of thing. It was a different world, completely different world. I don't know what they'd say if they came back today.
So much has changed, but it's the same country. And you can see traces of the old things if you look closely enough.